Four contractors associated with the Shatin to Central Link project suspended from tendering for government works.
Good evening. The government is suspending Leighton Contractors Asia from tendering for government works. That's among a series of actions against four contractors associated with the Shatin to Central Link project. Our Caleb Lung has more.
Four contractors have been temporarily blocked from tendering for government works in what the government called regulating actions following construction flaws in the Shatin to Central Link rail project. Leighton Contractors Asia is suspended from tendering for all works categories for 12 months, effective from today. This is just for construction issues associated with Hung Hom Station. The company is also punished for works related to Exhibition Center Station. Together with China State Construction Engineering Hong Kong, the two joint venture participants are blocked from tendering for two works categories for 3 months. The suspension period for China State Construction Engineering is also effective from today. Leighton's suspension will begin after the suspension period relating to Hung Hom Station. Two other contractors are penalized for problems associated with To Kwa Wan Station. Joint venture participants Samsung C&T Corporation and Sin Chong Construction are blocked from tendering for all works categories for 4 months, effective today. The Development Bureau said regulating actions were taken under prevailing mechanism, and it reserves the right to take further actions against works related to Hung Hom Station. Lawmaker Michael Tian, who is familiar with the city's railways, noted a loophole in the suspension decisions. That's because the suspended contractors could still bid for works of some public organizations such as the MTR Corporation and the Airport Authority. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Tragic news in upstate New York, where a limousine crashed, killing 18 people inside the vehicle and 2 outside. The stretched limo was headed to a surprise birthday party when witnesses saw it speeding down a hill. The vehicle then bolted through a stop sign before it crashed into a parked car and hit 2 pedestrians. All 17 people on board, including the driver and the 2 pedestrians, were killed. Among the victims were 2 pairs of newlyweds, 4 sisters from one family and 2 brothers from another. As officials label it the deadliest crash in America in a decade, family members are gutted.
My brother, I think, is broken. I think my sister-in-law is broken. I don't know how to say it. You can't wrap your head around such a tragedy where you have 4 of your daughters die. They were very smart and they were beautiful, and they lived life to the fullest. They were the best nieces anybody could have.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, at least 39 people were killed and dozens more hospitalized after a tanker truck collided with another vehicle. Only the charred wreckage of the vehicles were left on the road following the incident. Witnesses claim villagers rushed to collect leaking fuel after the accident when a fire broke out late Friday night. The country's health ministry said 20 people were killed on the scene while another 19 died later. More than 80 people were taken to hospitals for treatment. The country's president has ordered 3 days of mourning for the victims and their families. An investigation has been launched into what caused the accident.
In Romania, a referendum on a constitutional amendment to prevent same-sex couples from securing the right to marry failed. Gay rights supporters celebrated in Bucharest after the referendum failed to garner enough votes. 30% voter turnout was needed for it to be valid, but only about 20% of eligible voters went to the polls. The referendum wanted to change the Constitution to define marriage as strictly between a man and a woman. Currently, it uses the gender-neutral term of spouses. Romania decriminalized homosexuality back in 2001. However, it still bars marriage and civil partnerships from same-sex couples. And still ahead in our newscast, Brazil heads to a runoff election. Victor Mallet issued a 7-day visitor visa after failing to have his work visa renewed. And Nobel laureate Charles Cow's funeral.
"為慶祝正官莊第18間專門店開幕，專門店全線製品買3送1，為摯愛送上關懷，正官莊。
Welcome back to TVB News. In Brazil, a highly polarized presidential election has failed to produce a winner. A runoff will now be needed between far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro and leftist Fernando Haddad. Peter Coveas tells us more.
Polls closed with far-right Congressman Jair Bolsonaro in front. The Social Liberal Party leader garnered 46% of the votes, but short of a majority needed to win. The 63-year-old has been dubbed the Tropical Trump for his fiery style and nationalist agenda. The former Army captain was stabbed at a campaign rally 3 weeks ago and is promising to be tough on crime and relax gun ownership laws. He says Brazilians want to defend family values. People in the country don't want to continue on their current path. The election comes amid an economic slump and high crime rates that have prompted calls for change. This voter says Bolsonaro is the only one capable of putting an end to corruption and fixing the economy. If Bolsonaro is victorious in the runoff, it will signal a major change in the country. The Workers' Party won the last 4 elections. Their candidate is the former mayor of Sao Paulo, Fernando Haddad, who picked up about 29% of the votes yesterday. He is looking forward to a second chance. He believes the extra time given to voters to analyze platforms will benefit him. Haddad has strong ties to former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who many voters associate with good economic times. But analysts think that idea backfired against Haddad. Lula was blocked from the presidential race after being sentenced to 12 years in prison on corruption charges. Haddad also said he'd be willing to seek alliances with other political parties if he's elected Brazil's president. The runoff is scheduled for October 28th. Peter Coveas, TVB News.
A United Nations report says society must carry out unprecedented changes to the way it operates in order to meet a lower global warming target. Failure to do so risks more heat waves, flood-causing storms, and even the loss of certain species. That's according to a special report adopted by the International Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, at a meeting in the South Korean port city of Incheon.
First, climate change is already affecting people, ecosystems, and livelihoods all around the world. Second, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees is not impossible, but will require unprecedented transitions in all aspects of society. Third, there are clear benefits to keep warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to 2 degrees or higher. Every bit of warming matters.
IPCC warned that the current rate of warming would cause global temperatures to rise 1.5 degrees between 2030 and 2052. That's in addition to the 1 degree increase above pre-industrial levels since the mid-1800s. The 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change set dual goals, keeping a global temperature rise this century to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing efforts to limit the increase even further to 1.5 degrees. Keeping the 1.5 degrees target would delay the rise in sea levels and give more time to people who live on islands and along the coast, time to adapt to climate change. The lower target would reduce species loss and extinction, as well as the impact on terrestrial, freshwater, and coastal ecosystems.
Back locally, several journalists' associations petitioned outside the government headquarters asking for clarification concerning the work visa renewal of a British journalist based here in Hong Kong. Haley Joe reports.
Financial Times editor Victor Mallet was issued an unusual 7-day visitor visa when he returned to the city yesterday. British passport holders are normally allowed to stay in Hong Kong as a tourist for 6 months. A Financial Times spokesperson said Mallet was not given any official explanation. Several journalist groups petitioned outside the government headquarters, also demanding an answer. The groups included the Foreign Correspondents Club, the Hong Kong Journalists Association, and the Independent Commentators Association.
Chief Executive of Hong Kong SAR, Mrs. Carrie Lam, refusing a visa in this issue sets a terrible precedent for Hong Kong's reputation as a place where the rule of law applies and where freedom of speech is protected by law.
The FCC is simply asking for a reasonable explanation from the Hong Kong authorities on this issue. That's our stance.
The Hong Kong Journalists Association said it has no further actions planned for the time being, but it hopes the government will listen to the voices of the co-signers.
The European Union office to Hong Kong also weighed in and said this incident raises legitimate questions about the freedom of press and speech in the territory. Tam Miu Chung, Hong Kong delegate to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, has different views. He said the government's action was appropriate and it does not need to give any explanation. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Sources say the chief executive will speak on the progress of a few medical projects during her policy address. Meanwhile, labor rights, social welfare, and land supply could also feature in her speech on Wednesday. Sharon Tang has more.
This is Pak Shing Kok in Tseung Kwan O, where the city's first Chinese medicine hospital will be built. Former CE Leung Chun-ying announced plans for the hospital in 2014. It is expected to house some 400 beds. The hospital authority could put the project out for tender by December, while non-profit-making organizations will operate the facility. Western medicine practitioners will also be on site to provide services including X-ray examinations. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Unions staged a rally ahead of this week's policy address. Members accused the government of siding with the commercial sector. They want more attention paid to the plight of workers. Also, 4 alliances focusing on child development and housing rights jointly urged the government to subsidize computers and lunches for students in need and consider rental controls for poor families. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Hong Kong received more than 1.5 million visitors from the mainland during this year's National Day Golden Week holiday, which ended yesterday. That's an increase of around 20% when compared with last year. More details from Pinky Wong.
Crowds at the lobby of the high-speed railway's West Kowloon station. In the first week of October, the Immigration Department noted around 3.4 million visitors set foot in the city. Around 1.5 million of them were from the mainland. That's an increase of almost 20%, the highest percentage rise during the Golden Week in recent years. Most mainland visitors were on self-guided tours, accounting for 60% of the total. Among them, around 15% chose to cross over by the recently opened Express Rail link. This mom took her kids to visit Hong Kong for 3 days, saying the high-speed rail link makes traveling faster and convenient, so she will visit Hong Kong more often. The MTR Corporation says passenger numbers for the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Rail link have reached 880,000 since service commenced just more than 2 weeks ago. Even though Hong Kong saw an increase in the number of mainland visitors during the Golden Week, there was a 13% drop as far as foreign tourists were concerned. The tourism industry will meet with officials to find ways to optimize local tourist attractions so as to draw more visitors to the city. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Dignitaries, family, and friends today bade farewell to the late Nobel laureate Sir Charles Kao, who died last month at the age of 84. Top government officials and prominent members of the education field attended the funeral of the father of fiber optics at Hong Kong Funeral Home this morning. Kao was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2002. He and his wife founded the Charles K. Kao Foundation for Alzheimer's Disease in 2010 to raise public awareness of the disease and enhance support to patients, their families, and caregivers.
Mrs. Ko cared about dementia patients very much, especially how the society should give them the right respect and dignity, which is very important, which is very much neglected previously.
From all of us, thanks for